Come all you moonshiners if you want to hear.
Welcome back. It's George. Yeah, I know I've been gone for a little while, but we're back. And you know, we've had a couple of, we've had so many requests for the PID controllers that I thought I'd put together a couple more videos just to kind of explain it, because sometimes it takes different ways of explaining something or going step by step to try to demystify this whole process. And we're all looking for what you call precise control if you're trying to control a still or other heating device, be it a bake oven, if you're doing bake light, which takes a lot of high temperatures. But PIDs are very, very instrumental in that whole process, because what they do is they sense at the same time that they provide enough power to reach an appropriate temperature that you set, and then by its integral and derivative process and being proportional, remember proportionate, just enough, it tries to find its own balance. And that's probably the easiest way to explain that. So what it is a temperature controller that finds the balance that you set without spiking over or being under that temperature, and it tries to find that by evaluating where it is, where it was, and where it's going. So a lot more about that later on. I don't want to get too technical. I'm not going to get technical at all, as a matter of fact. So just sit back, and you know that when we get the whiteboard out, if you've seen any of the other videos, yeah, we're going to do a little bit of math. But this is like really simple stuff, but it'll take you a long way down the road. Now, what I've got is I've got a PID controller that's operating right now that I put together, and you're going to be able to put together the same thing. And I'm going to show you every bit of it, all the parts and pieces that you need, and exactly how to put this together. Now, what's more instrumental about this whole process is I do believe that not only how it works, why it works, and the theory behind why it works, so that should something go wrong, you'll be able to figure it out and fix it. So without further ado, let's move on. All right, this is the PID controller. It's already, let me put that away. It's already in its box, and it's already operating, and you'll see here that I've got this thing set. Now I've got it set for 30 degrees Celsius, and right now it's sensing 25 degrees Celsius through this probe. And you'll notice that there's a light on here. This light is the out, and what that's doing is that's providing the power through this socket that I have that mounted at the top of the box. See, I just mounted sockets at the top of the box instead of the front of the box on this one. They come in many, many different models. You can do just about anything. You can sex it up. I even put two switches on here, a switch for the power operation for the whole thing, and a switch just for your water pump, on and off. And I've also got an amp meter on here. This is something you can add to it. You don't have to have that. But it's just something I added to it just to tell me how many amps are going through here, so I can kind of watch it. Sort of like your cool points go way up when you can show somebody, watch this. The amps go up, go down, go up, go down, go up, go down. That's when you apply a load to it. Now I've got this light, and this light doesn't provide a whole lot of load, so my amp meter is not going to move, because it's such a minute amount of amps that go through to make this thing operate. And I'll show you that why mathematically in a second. But you'll notice here that every time you see it's sensing, what it's doing is it's reading the temperature off of this probe electronically through this PID. And the PID's thinking, it's going, okay, I need more power to get from 26 to 30. But I don't need a whole lot, but let's see how much I need. So you see it comes on and it goes off. And what it's doing is it's sensing. It's okay, I only need X amount of power to get from 26 to 30. How much do I need? Well, I don't know. Let me give it a shot. So it gives it a shot, and then it senses, it goes through its integral derivative process, and then it shuts off, goes through its process, then it comes back on. And it says, okay, I only needed this much to get there. In this particular case, the light just keeps coming on and going off, coming on and going off, and it does that because in its process right now it's thinking it's back on. It goes, I'm not there yet, so I'm back on. But you'll notice that it stays at 26. Now what happens if I hold this in my hand and use my body heat? Let's see what happens. It should go up to 27 here in a second. It goes off. We're still sensing. There's 27 degrees. Now this is Celsius. This is the Rex C100, and it only senses in Celsius. It's at 28. So now the PID's thinking, it's going, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm closer. I'm real close now. I don't need a whole lot of power. Let me hit a little bit more. Let's see how much further I can go. I'm at 29 now. Ooh, I can back off some. So it goes through its process, and once it considers that, once it gets to 30, it'll shut off. It'll remain off, but it'll come on momentarily every once in a while just to keep it at that. See, it's at 30 now. It'll come on, and it'll go off. Now, if I go above 30, it'll shut off, but then it'll test the system. It'll give it a spike. It's just a test, and then it'll go back off. So that's how the PID works. Now, you can have one of these, and you can build one yourself. Now, let me show you the internal components of this. Let me unplug this light and get this out of our way, because we don't need that right now. Now, when we open this up, you're going to probably think, oh my goodness, look at that mess. But believe it or not, this is a mess that you could put together, and we're going to demystify this whole process, and I'm going to show you exactly how all of this is wired, and we're going to make sense of it so that you can put together your own PID. How's that? All right. Let me set this back here. I'll turn my PID off. And you'll notice I've got a fan on the end, and that's a cooling fan. In most cases, if you're only using a 1500 watt heated element, it's not absolutely necessary, but they're really nice to have. This is one of those better to have and not need than to need and not have. Okay, the primary parts to this are, of course, the PID, and I've got a couple of different brands out here that I wanted to show you. I have two favorites. And my two favorites are the Inkbird. That's the Inkbird brand. And you'll see that. And of course, then there's the MYPIN. This is the TA4. You can use a TA6, a TA7, the TA9. The only major difference between these are price to start with. And when you do a TA6, it's a little bit larger. When you do a TA9, it's really big. It's just a larger face. And then the old tried and true Rex C100. Now this is a Rex C100. The Rex C100 is a really good PID, and it comes with, of course, and it all depends on where you get it from. These things are going to run you anywhere from $13 to $16. And it comes with Chinese or Japanese, Chinese instructions. Some of them, these are all Chinese. It's all Chinese to me. It all depends on who delivers it to you, because they're carried by many, many different vendors. And when they show up, it may be in English, it may be in Chinese, it may be in Chinese and English. But just trust me that the English translation to the Chinese is not that good, but it's still legible and you can understand it. All right, and it also comes with, as most of them do, it comes with this clip that goes on the outside. And what you do is, once you cut a hole and you place your PID inside your box, this slides over the outside from inside, and it kind of squeezes. See there? And it squeezes that up against there so it holds it steady. That's what that's for. So this is a Rex C100, and the Rex C100 only, I say again, only measures in Celsius, so you can't adjust it. It has a lot of adjustments. You can adjust the hysteresis, you can adjust a whole bunch of things in there, but you cannot adjust Fahrenheit and Celsius. It's only Celsius. So they're the cheapest, and they work just as good as the rest of them, so we'll set that aside. Then we come to the Inkbird. The Inkbird and the MYPIN are actually the same PID. It comes with a really, really good set of instructions, all written in English, of course. And we're gonna do a video later on. We're gonna demystify all of this information so that when you open it up and look at it, you're not surprised. Set that aside. Now you'll notice that they look quite similar. The The Inkbird looks very, very similar to the Rex C100. It looks a little bit different, but it looks quite similar. But what the major difference between this is you have many more features and functions that you can adjust on here. You can adjust it to read Celsius or Fahrenheit. It's got an auto-tune mode. There's a lot of things you can do with this, and again, we'll get to that in a later video. So the Inkbird runs you probably around anywhere between $21 to $23, but trust me, it's well worth the money. And then last but not least, we have really what is my favorite is the MYPIN. And MYPIN is such a direct method of operating a PID, and you'll notice that the MYPIN looks almost exactly like the other two. It's got a couple of different features on it. The features are arranged a little bit differently, but it does measure in either Celsius or Fahrenheit, so you can set that. And again, we'll show you how to do that. That's really easy to do. One thing I want to caution you about, though, now these run you anywhere from, again, 18 to 26 bucks. It all depends on what kind of a package you pick up. You can pick up a package that comes with the solid state relay and the thermal couple and the heat dissipator, the heat sink. And if you get that, it'll probably run you about 26 bucks. But I'm going to show you, I will explain a little bit more. Now, one thing I want to caution you about, though, is there are actually two different types. And you got to be really cautious when you order these, because you'll look on there and you'll see a MYPIN, a TA4. Oh, that's the one George uses. Oh, and it's only 14 bucks. And you'll click it, it'll show up, and you'll get this one. Now, they're exactly the same PID. But I want you to notice on there, look at that where it says, it starts on, let me make sure I get it right. It goes temperature, model, input, output. Temperature controller, model, input, output. That output line is very critical. One says relay, one says SSR. Make sure you get the one that says SSR. And normally it'll be advertised as a TA4 SNR. And SNR is just the code for the model number. This one says SSR, TA4 SSR, or TA4 RNR under the model number. You'll notice that, the model number. TA4 SSR, TA4 RNR. And then look down at the output. The RNR says relay. In the SSR, the output says SSR. Now the difference between the two is that the SSR operates your solid state relay by an output via two wires that control this, and we'll talk about this in a second. You can hook up, I don't care how many of these you hook up to an RNR, the RNR is a relay within itself. So this would be really good for other applications, not necessarily a high wattage heat element, because it will only be able to handle so many watts through it, because it's got a small internal relay where this actually replaces that small internal relay through an output from this PID. So just make sure you get the SSR, not the RNR. All right, let's set those aside. Now, a couple of other things you will need. And like I said, sometimes these come in a package, and that's your solid state relays. I've got two here, and these are made by Fotek, and a lot of times they come in the package. One is a 25 amp, and the other one's a 40 amp. And it says, so right on top it says SSR 25 DA, or SSR 40 DA. The difference between the two is this one, the 25 DA, will handle 25 amps across pins 1 and 2. And we're not going to reach 25 amps. And we'll explain more about amps shortly. This one will operate and control up to 40 amps across pin 1 and 2. If you got a 40 amp, you'll never go wrong. So it really doesn't matter which one you use. It all depends on how you feel about amperage and safety. Okay, now we have a couple of other things here. These are the K-type thermocouples, the probes. Now, if you buy it as a kit, it will normally come with this small probe. And you'll see it's got a small end on it, just a real small tip. And that works it works perfectly fine. It's a K-type and it has only 2 connectors, a red and a blue. So if you got a K-type, it's a red and a blue. It's good up to about 800 degrees Fahrenheit. You can also order separately, and these will run about $6, $5. It all depends. You can, if you buy a pack of them, you can get them cheaper than that, of course. But this got the 5 centimeter probe on it, which is a longer probe, so you can stick it down inside your condenser, or you can stick it in the side of your pot. You can do whatever you want to, but it's got a 6 millimeter screw-in connector, and it also has the 2 leads. And this one is, again, they're red and blue. So you'll always notice that the K-type couplers have 2 connectors, and there are a couple of other different couplers too. Just make sure you get the K-type. They come in K, J, P and T, PT, RTD. Just get the K. K's are the most common. All right, so some of the other things that we used, a box. I've got this hobby box. This hobby box is, it's 220 by 170 by 120 millimeters. And you'll see that on the sticker on there. And that's where we got it from. I got this from MCM, and I'll try to find a place on the video to put a list of all of these and the source. These run about $11, $12, $11.99, $10.99. It all depends on what part of the month I guess you order them. But they're really good. They're durable. They're sturdy. You know, they're a little bit easier to cut than some of your big ABS plastic. Now, what I did use in there as well is a fan. I used a DC fan, a 12-volt fan that I purchased. This run me about $3. And if you get a DC fan, you're going to need a transformer. Because remember, you're running 120 volts into this thing. So you got one of 2 options. You can get a regular, and these run about $4 or $5, and it's a pretty substantial Studley, and we'll show you how to wire that up. That's just a transformer, 120 volts in, 12 volts out, and that operates that fan. And I bought like 20 of these things, and I think I paid like $3 a piece for them. But they're real small integrated circuits, and this guy got 2 pins on the back for 120 volts in and the 12 volts out. They work just as well, and they fit right inside the box. I got these because they were a little bit easier for me to work with, so you can get these as well. All right, some of the other things that we have here, we've got the amp meter. Now I've got an amp meter here, and it comes in a little box, and this goes from 0 to 20 amps, and you can see it's already reading 5 amps. That means I got to use that screw down there to zero it out to set it. But it's real simple. It's just 2 connectors on the back. And it's a hot wire in, a hot wire out. You put this inside the circuit. We're going to show you that as well. And that's only if you want that. You don't necessarily have to use that. 2 of the other things that are really important are the switches and the receptacles. Now remember, we're going to be using 120 volt, 1500 watt heating element. When you use a 1500 watt heating element, its peak value for amp draw is only 12.5 amps. So we've got a switch here that's rated at 120 volts at 15 amps. Now you'll know that because it says so right on the side of the switch. It says 15A-120 volts VAC only. Okay? Volts alternating current only. 15 amp. So this will be sufficient for a 1500 watt heater element. Now, in addition, we've got the 15 amp, 125 volt receptacle. This is a standard receptacle you'd find anywhere in your house. 120, 125 volt, but there's a 15 amp. So that's what it's capable of handling. And remember, we're using a 1500 watt, so we're using at peak value. We're only going to go to 12.5 volt amps. So this will be very sufficient. Now, remember, if you're going to use a larger wattage heater element, which will give you a little bit more control and a little bit quicker. Let's say, for instance, you go up to a 2000 watt 120 volt heater element. Well, that's when you get into And I'd actually recommend that if you're gonna put one of these together, you might as well go with what I'm going to show you right now, because it's better to have and not need than need not have. And in the interest of safety, you want to make sure you've got it. Now what this one is, and this one's the 20 amp 120 volt receptacle. Now you'll notice the difference between the two real easy. That besides price, the 15 amps going to run you about $1.50. This one's going to run you like $2.75. It's better to have this one. And you'll notice that you'll see that on on this one here, you'll see that horizontal line. You'll notice that the receptacles just look a little bit differently, and you'll be able to tell them right off the bat. You'll see them right away. But they both operate exactly the same way, except this one will handle the 20 amps. Remember, if you're using 2000 watt, you're somewhere up to 16.1 or something. We're going to figure that out. Now, at the same time, remember, if you're operating with that much, that many amps, it's probably not a bad idea to just go ahead and spend the extra $1 and get the 20 amp switch to go with it. Then you'll notice the 20 amp switch is a whole lot larger than the 15 amp switch, and so therefore it costs a little bit more. But it's written right on the outside of the switch. It'll say 20 amp 20A-120V, and that's 20 amp 120 volts. So that's what it's capable of handling. All right, that kind of covers everything that you need to have here. Let's do some real quick math. And let me show you something about this. If you've got a 1500 watt, let me show you the 1500 watt heater element, by the way. Yeah, I'll show it to you right here. My goodness, I spent $8 for that down at Home Depot. And then what it is, it's a water heater element. And the water heater element has only 2 connections on the back, one for one wire and one for the other. It's not polarized, so it doesn't matter which wire you put there as long as it's not the ground wire. The ground wire I have soldered to a piece of wire I got wrapped around the base. So you got your hot lead and you got your neutral lead. That's 120 volts. And that's a 1500 watt. And you'll know it's a 1500 watt because it'll say so right on the back side. It'll say 1500 W, 120 volt, 1500 watts. Now, if we want to understand what we're capable of doing, we need to understand just a little bit about electricity. So if you have 1500 watts and you divide that by the voltage, which is 120 volts, that will equal, we'll use a calculator, 1500 watts divided by 120, 1500 watts divided by 120 volts equals 12.5 amps. So that's the amount of current that's going to be running through your system at peak usage. Now with a PID, remember the PID is going to only provide enough, a proportional amount through the process. But at peak, when it comes on initially and it's looking to heat up, it's going to produce, or it's going to pass 12.5 amps. Now, what happens if we change our heater element and we go to a 2000 watt heater element? Well, if you go to a 2000 watt heater element, if you divide that by your voltage, 120 volts, you are now, divided by 120, we are now at 16.6 amps. So we've already exceeded the 15 amp rating on the basic standard household switch and receptacle, but we have not exceeded the 20 amp receptacle or the 20 amp switch. That's why I recommend you use these. They just, for your safety and your sake of mind, because what will happen if not? If you exceed the amperage on the receptacle or the switch, and it can only hold so much, well, all of that excess amperage is going to be dissipated as heat. And these switches aren't designed to hold that much heat. So if it's not designed to hold that heat, then it's just going to heat up, it's going to start to melt, you have potential of fire. Nobody wants that, so look, for the extra $2 you're going to spend, grab the right switches. Yeah, so that kind of brings us to a close for this one, and we'll open up a new video here in just a second. Please hang with us, and we're going to put these together. Now, there are many, many ways you can do this. You can do this with 120 volts. We're also going to do a video on the 220 volt, because we get a lot of questions about the 220 volt. We're also going to do a video on multiple PIDs in a box at 120 volts, multiple PIDs in a box if you're going to use 2 heater elements at 220 volts. We're going to show you how to sex it up a little bit. We're going to put switches. We'll put dials if you want to put dials. You can put buzzers on them. You can do a whole lot of different things to a PID, but if you understand the basics and the base model of the PID, it'll set you free when it comes to heating up your still, working on your bakelite oven, or whatever type of electrical heating event that you've got going on in life. And oh, by the way, if you're doing cooling, these PIDs can do that as well. There's a way to set that. So we'll also need to do a video on how to adjust all of those different associated functions that come with the PIDs. And trust me, we'll cover every one of them. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Like us on Facebook, or like us on Facebook, and please subscribe. Look, I'll be back shortly, so you hang in there and just check out the next video.